Good afternoon and welcome to the second session of this meeting of the Planning Committee taking place from the Walton Suite in Winchester Guildhall. It's Wednesday the 15th of November 2023 and the time is 2 p.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter and I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. To my right is Councillor Edwards, the Vice Chair of the Committee, and around the table we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers. Lorna Hutchings from the planning team, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, the case officer who will sit here where Liz Young is sitting, and will change depending on the item, and Matthew Watson, who's from Bureaucratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice on how to turn these on is set out on the website. Please can I remind everyone to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. I hope you've had a chance to look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of the remaining time. So, turning to the agenda, we are now at item number 11, which is at 35 Church Lane, Colden Common, and is an application for a change of use of property from a domestic residential use to a mixed use for residential and provision of swimming lessons to children. And our presenting officer is Liz Young. Good afternoon, Liz, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to the continued use of part of the existing dwelling and swimming pool area to host children's swimming lessons. Just moving to the first slide. This first slide just shows the site location plan. The application site is marked by the red line, which you can see is towards the centre of the page. It's adjoined on both sides by residential properties, accessed from Church Lane, which is a C-classified highway. It backs onto open woodland, but it falls within the built-up area of Colden Common. Moving to the next slide, this is just an aerial view looking towards the application site, which is marked by the yellow star. The white rectangular area that you can see is the swimming pool and its enclosure. So the pool itself and the enclosure have been in place for some time and were in place before the use commenced. So this application relates only to the change of use. This next slide just shows the site layout plan. The area to the front of the site, so that's this area here at the bottom of the page, is used for off-road parking for up to 9 cars. The site is accessed around the side property, so just to the left where you can see the arrow. Sorry. Oh, go back. So the smaller the red rectangles is the changing and plant area, which is within the main house. The larger rectangle is the pool itself, which lies to the rear, in the rear garden. This next slide just shows a closer view. So you can see here, again, the utility room and pool plant area. So the pool itself is surrounded by a patio area. There's about a distance of approximately 1 metre between this and the boundary with the neighbouring property. So in terms of the use itself, this takes place on weekdays. So Mondays to Wednesdays, there would be a morning and an afternoon session. The morning sessions would run from 9:30 to 11:30. In the afternoon, it would run from 3:30 till 7 p.m. Then on Thursdays, there would be only a morning session. On Friday, there would be an afternoon session. It's understood that there would be 4 children at a time. Each lesson would last for half an hour with 1 instructor. Just moving on to the site photographs. These first 2 just show the view looking towards the application site. So you can see the access there off the highway. It lies on a relatively straight section of road. No objections have been received from highways in relation to the proposal. This next photo just shows the view from within the rear garden area looking towards the pool and the enclosure. The enclosure that you can see is a retractable structure, so it can be removed during hot weather. Just beyond the close border fence, you can see the closest neighbour, which is number 33. This photo just shows the view looking towards the rear boundary of the site from the pool area, just looking towards the area of woodland the site backs onto. This next photo just shows the view looking northwards back towards the pool and main house. This photo just shows the view looking towards the property which adjoins the west boundary of the site, again from the pool area. This final photo just shows the view, the longer range view looking back towards the pool area and the main house, with the 2 neighbouring properties on either side. That brings us to the end of the slides. The recommendation is that planning permission should be refused. This is based upon the comments received from Environmental Protection, who raised concerns about the noise impacts towards the living conditions of neighbouring properties. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We now move to the public speaking. We have first 2 objectors, Dr. Adelaide Morris and Dennis Dawes. If you would like to come forward to the microphones. You have 3 minutes between you. Is one of you going to speak? And lovely, okay. And Mr. Dawes, you're there for questions at the end if necessary, I assume. Thank you. And when you start speaking, the timer will start. If you could just switch on the microphone, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of myself and my neighbours. The following slides indicate policy numbers in Winchester District's local plan, which we hope will protect our neighbourhood. Next slide, please. Church Lane is a peaceful neighbourhood of well-tended gardens with residents who are proud of their homes. On-street parking is kept to an absolute minimum, especially during peak times when the road becomes very busy. Next slide. Objections have come from a very wide range of neighbours for the reasons outlaid in the following slides. Next slide, please. An eyesore for residents and a green corridor destroyed. Greenery, trees and shrubs have been removed to create a hard surface over the entire front of number 35. Parking provision dominates the site, but is still inadequate for the business. Next slide, please. Car park lighting visually intrudes into surrounding houses, even through drawn curtains. Bottom photo shows headlights of vehicles leaving number 35 that shine directly into the windows of homes opposite. Idling cars produce unacceptable levels of pollution. Peace is destroyed by banging car doors, noisy customers in the car park. This ongoing disturbance has a significant impact on the health and well-being of neighbours. Next slide, please. Poor parking by customers affect residents' access to and from their homes. On-street parking, frequently on the pavement, leads to traffic build-up, impacting on the safety of residents exiting their own drives. Centre photo shows site alignment, sign line impingement, which affects both residents and customers' safety. Afternoon lessons run through in peak traffic times on a busy road, and chaotic parking has the potential to cause difficulties for emergency services. Below are customers' cars that have started to occupy overflow spaces meant for St Vigor Way residents. That red car to the left in the lower picture is frequently parked dangerously within 10 metres of the junction with Church Lane. Now, these customers might appear to be arriving on foot, but they're not. Next slide, please. I live to the right of the swimming pool. Note the close proximity of the pool enclosure and walkway. Those of us neighbours either side of the school suffer stress due to noise, singing, whooping, screaming from instructions, carers and children. Worse still when the roof is retracted. Our normal, and this is inside our houses, our normal life cannot continue until the lessons end. Final slide. Final slide. This pool is in the wrong place to become a commercial swim school. Reducing the number of lessons would not take away from the fact that this swim school is noisy and disruptive to the entire neighbourhood, and that sign didn't work.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for keeping within your time. Members, do we have any questions of clarification? Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you. I had a question in regards to, because the application before us, it doesn't mention that it's retrospective or the swimming pool's already in use. It's a change of use that's before us. So from what you've said, you're suggesting that the swimming class is already taking place. Is that correct, with the traffic pictures and the noise that you've described?
We've put up with this for 2.5 years.
Okay.
And that's why we've got evidence to show the impact on our neighbourhood.
Okay, no, thank you.
We are suffering.
That.
Any other questions, members? Thank you. It was a very clear presentation. If you could just switch off the mic, that would be lovely. And you may return to your seats. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Maggie Hill. Councillor Hill, you've had a long wait, I'm sorry. So you are representing Colden Common Parish Council. And you have 3 minutes, and you know the routine anyway. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. There are 23 comments supporting this application from users of the swimming classes, not neighbours, including 10 from outside the village. 12 objections are from close neighbours who have been massively impacted by the business being run for the last 2.5 years. Main concerns: noise has severely affected nearby residents, constant loud shrieking, shouting, singing, so they've been unable to enjoy the amenity of their home or gardens or relax because of the volume of noise coming from number 35. In hot weather, the noise is even greater when the pool cover is retracted. Neighbours on both sides are unable to read in their gardens, study inside their houses, or sleep when on night shifts. Every word is clearly heard inside all their rooms. High volume of traffic as users come and go. It overlaps at the end of each session as one group leaves and the next arrives. The 9 parking spaces on site are insufficient. Parking spills over onto Church Lane and St Vigor Way, blocking the sight lines for all neighbours trying to exit their own homes, and makes traffic along the roads hazardous for all. The noise of car engines manoeuvring, voices, doors slamming is considerable. Engine fumes add to the unpleasantness. Hours of activity: the impression is given that activity is confined largely to certain times of the day. However, classes can run until 7 p.m. and during term times, with private pool hires at weekends. There have been recent advertisements for instructors for Sundays, adult classes from 8:30 a.m, baby classes and aqua yoga. Pollution. The number of cars coming, going, manoeuvring and fumes from the two boilers that heat the pool are considerable. Proximity to neighbouring houses. The pool enclosure is under 1 metre from the neighbouring property. Neighbours have had to erect a higher fence to keep their privacy as people run along the path beside their house. Proximity exacerbates the considerable noise from pool users shouting, whooping and singing. In summary, residents have endured this disturbance for 2.5 years, which contravenes planning policies DM 15, 16, 17 and 18. Environmental health recommend refusal because of the unacceptable level of activity, noise and close proximity to domestic dwellings. This is not an essential business for the area. There are 6 others within a 5-mile radius. I do urge the committee to refuse this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hill. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Can you just clarify, there's a location for 9 cars.
Pardon?
There is a location for 9 cars on the proposed site.
So I understand.
4 children per session. And okay, if there's a run over, that makes possibly 8 cars. I'm just trying to understand the number of cars.
And I'm told that there is a confusion when the one lot is leaving and one lot is coming. And I don't know whether there perhaps are on occasions when there are more than 4 children.
Can you also confirm whether this is being used in addition to children swimming? As the amount of noise that you're indicating is coming from the site would possibly not be just children.
Well, I understand, I've been told that there are private pool sessions at weekends, so they may very well include adults. And I understand that the children do make a great deal of noise as they're carrying out their lessons in the pool, which reverberates around. They're talking about, I mentioned that they're advertising for adult classes from 8:30 a.m. So presumably that's coming online as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. I understand from your answer to Councillor Williams' question, sorry, not your answer, but the answer to Councillor Williams' question was that this has been ongoing for about 2.5 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why has it taken so long to come before this committee, and has there been any enforcement action prior?
I think that's something that I would have to refer back to the planning department.
You can ask the officer, Councillor Cunningham. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of clarification for the parish councillor? No? Thank you very much, Councillor Hill. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Now we have the ward councillor, Councillor Cook. Good afternoon, Sue. You have 5 minutes. You know the routine.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, fellow councillors, officers and members of the general public. I begin my time having to fully take agreement with the officer and the environmental officer's report to refuse this application. I then wish to make it very clear that for those of you that don't know, I'm actually a very keen swimmer. And I was very fortunate to be able to learn to swim at a very young age. So I firmly believe it is important for babies, toddlers, children alike, and parents and adults, should I say, to learn to swim. But let's talk about this application and its location in a residential area. We've already heard that this application has taken, sadly, 2.5 years to get here. And I'll be more than happy to take questions subject to Madam Chair's permission after. There were objections and there was support, and in the application 50% of the support in fact didn't even live in the village of Colden Common. I'll come to that later. We've heard about DM 15, 16, 17 and 18, which it is contrary to in the planning policies. The level of noise and disturbance is disproportionate to any value that this application, if it was in fact to be approved by you as a committee today. The hours of activity that are advertised don't quite seem to stack up. The proximity of the pool, as we've heard for one resident, is less than 1 metre away. The covering of the pool was done a couple of years ago, and in that time it is not soundproofed by any imagination. And when the weather is permissive, it actually has a roof that is retractable, which then allows the sound to carry even further. When the pool was built back in 23 years ago, the residents were more than happy for that to be built, but for families to use and the residents, not as a business as we have here. When the school first started, it was only in the mornings, 8:30 to 1:30 at the most. In fact, one of the residents even allowed the instructor to park their car in their drive. But that time went on to later in the day. Now, it's not just about the sound for the children hooping and hollering, which means they're having fun and they're learning, I know, but it's the constant cars driving backwards, forwards. They're moving in the driveway, doors slamming, as we've heard. There are private parties held as well. My time is short and sweet today, but I want to add there is a timeline to all of this. So back some time ago now, when there was a complaint, which was back in November 22, a noise complaint made by a resident, they didn't pursue it, even though they spoke to the environmental health and they spoke to enforcement, they didn't pursue it. Then the retrospective planning application came in November 22. 22 again, December, the objections went on the portal. And that's when it all got rather nasty, I suppose you could say. A noise survey was carried out by the residents, but in those 2 weeks that the equipment was there, the noise dramatically was reduced. Then the environmental health, they carried out a survey, and hence why we are now here today. This application hasn't been rushed. Yes, there's been 3 changes of planning officers, but at each stage, the planning officers have fully briefed themselves with their notes. Enforcement action was there, but it wasn't pursued. I began my 5 minutes today saying and referring to the parish as they have spoken, and the resident has spoken for many others. I will say one thing, from the 50% of people that wrote on the portal, believe it or not, they came from Winchester, Oliver's Battery, Moorstead, Chandler's Ford. So they obviously drive, I would have thought. So I asked this committee to please ask me questions, debate as you all do so well, but I do ask this committee to refuse this application in the way that it's been presented to us today. This is a residential area. It doesn't need a swim school open 4, 5, however many days a week, however many hours. It's the wrong place. Great business, but the wrong place. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Members, do we have questions of clarification for Councillor Cook? No, you were very clear and concise. Thank you very much, Councillor Cook. Thank you. We now move on to the supporters, Mr. and Mrs. Brooks. Lovely. You'd like to take your seats? Is one of you going to speak and the other be available to answer questions? Thank you very much. So you turn on the microphone, the button at the bottom, lovely, and your time will begin when you start speaking. Thank you.
There is no other swim school locally who offers what we do. We are a unique swim school, which means that a lot of children with special needs who do not fit in anywhere else have a safe, warm, clean, easy to access, nurturing place to learn the valuable life-saving skills of how to swim. We're providing a valuable service to the community. We're promoting active, healthy kids. We are creating jobs. We are paying taxes. We're supporting charities, and we are positively contributing to society. Whilst we regret the fact that our closest neighbours at 33 Church Lane are disturbed by the use of the pool for swimming lessons, and we understand they've encouraged other local residents to object, despite the fact that the use does not in any significant way impact upon them. I'm sure that they are also disturbed by our private use with our own 3 young sons, which is frequent, and particular during the summer months, when our neighbours are most likely to be using their garden. Unfortunately, it seems that the previous owners of our house do not make great use of the pool, and hence our regular use has come as an unwelcome change. That disturbance is purely a matter of subjective opinion. The noise survey shows that the use for lessons is not objectively unacceptable. unexcessively noisy. There are no highways or drainage objections. The swim school use is a very valuable amenity and hence acceptable in policy terms, as evidenced by the large number of supporting comments that have been received in respect of the application, and fulfills the need which is not satisfied by other options. I therefore would ask you to give great weight to that substantial public benefit when comparing it with the subjective convenience of two people and conclude that the public good outweighs the objection. We'd like to highlight some poignant facts around the situation of children's swimming lessons in England currently. Shockingly, in the UK, 1 in 4 children leave primary school unable to swim, despite being the only sport which can be considered a life-saving skill. More than 1,000 swimming pools have closed across England since 2010, and a further 1,500 are at risk of shutting soon. This translates to a total of 666,000 children across England left with no option to progress their swimming. And statutory guidance states that all schools need to provide swimming instruction in either Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2. And in fact, we've had local schools contact us to use our swimming pool because they're unable to get space in the local leisure centre pools.
Thank you very much.
And sorry, just before my time's over, there were some things said by the other people that were factually incorrect. So I'm happy to discuss those if you would like to.
Right, members, thank you very much. Questions of clarification, members? Councillor Williams.
I was wondering if you could clarify, because the proposal we've got before us, I won't go through all the times, but it states about the swimming lesson times, and it was obviously mentioned by the parish council and some of the neighbours that it was being used for private parties and mermaid parties. Are you able to just sort of reiterate, you know, don't obviously go into extensive detail, but the primary use that you're proposing in regards to the swimming lessons and any other activities, weekend, etc., that will take place?
Firstly, Liz mentioned that we operate on Thursday mornings and Friday afternoons. That's incorrect. We don't operate on Friday afternoons at all. And admittedly, a few friends of ours have had mermaid parties in our pool. That was many, many months ago. We don't do that. And we don't hire our pool out at weekends. It's purely for our own personal use at weekends.
Councillor Reid.
Chairman, during other people's presentations, it's been indicated that you're advertising adult swimming lessons. Is that correct?
Yes, we have advertised aqua yoga for adults, but we never actually pursued that because of all of this, really. But it's never happened.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. You mentioned use by schools, and I wonder if you could give an indication of the proportion of your bookings that come from schools and whereabouts those schools are.
We haven't actually offered our pool out to any schools. We've been proactively contacted by a few local schools because they were struggling to get time in their local pools. We simply just couldn't accommodate schools purely due to the size of our swimming pool. There's 30 children in a class, and that's unreasonable for us to accommodate.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
That's okay.
You said there were some factual inaccuracies.
Yes. So we've touched on a few of them. Private pool hire and adult lessons, we don't do that. 2 boilers were mentioned to power the heat the swimming pool. Believe it or not, we have our own home that we need to heat as well. So one of those boilers is very generously for our home. For people to say that their lives are ruined by the noise in their own homes is unfathomable to me, because we live in the home where these lessons are conducted from and we're not disturbed at all. We can't hear the doors or the noise. So it's just a little bit
Okay.
unreasonable, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. Perhaps you could, I don't think there are any more questions, members. Oh, Councillor Williams, another question.
Sorry, no, just a brief one. Obviously, you know, the neighbours have obviously mentioned that noise is a significant impact for them. Have you taken any measures to mitigate the noise from swimming lessons at all?
There are many measures that we can take, but we have spoken extensively to planning about this, and no one's able to suggest what we can implement. Well, we've considered implementing a more formal structure to buffer the noise, and so that we don't have to open the structure. We can implement an air handling unit so we don't have to open the structure. Anything you want to add?
Well, yeah, and we've also put to the council that we could put inside the enclosure sound deadening foam, but it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. No one seems to be willing to engage with us about actually tackling any of the problems, and that's something that's been constant throughout our application. We reached out to our neighbours as soon as we found out they objected, but they flatly refused to speak to us about anything. So we couldn't address their concerns because they wouldn't talk to us about it.
And we also run the risk of spending unnecessary money, of course, but we're more than willing to implement anything in order to make everyone happy.
Thank you very much. If you could switch off your microphones and return to your seats. Thank you for your contribution. Right, Liz, is there anything you want to respond to or add to your report before we go to questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just one point on the hours. The hours stated in the report just reflects the hours that were written down in the planning statement that accompanied the application form as well, that accompanies the application.
Thank you. So, members, we'll take questions on the whole report. Councillor Cunningham. Sorry?
I have a question for the case officer, please.
Yes, good. Carry on.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Can you tell me why it's taken 2.5 years for this to come to this committee? And is there any record of enforcement actions being taken in this case? Thank you.
Yeah, my understanding was originally the application was submitted following correspondence with the enforcement department. So
I think Mrs. Hutchings has got something to add to this.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's just easy for me to explain a lot because I've been working across the enforcement team and with the development management team. It's the time taken involved since we became aware of this, which is because of the impacts, and so that was reported to our enforcement team. So there was quite a lot of time in terms of trying to remedy the situation and find a solution through the enforcement process, and that has resulted in the application for the solution as it is now, which is before you. I'm not sure that the 2.5 years is entirely work with us. I think that was the implication that the noise and the activity has been going on. So we've just been trying to negotiate and find a solution, because clearly what you've got here is something that needs planning permission because of the impacts. It reaches the bar of change of use potentially because of the impacts, and you do want to try to resolve it as a neighbour amenity issue in that time.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wonder if we could just talk about noise for a moment. Obviously, noise can be, in terms of being a nuisance, can be subjective. What actual noise surveys have been done other than the one mentioned on page 139? It's the second para. Have we carried out one from our own resources, or was that the only one that's been referred to?
in terms of how it's been assessed, the environmental protection officer, I understood, installed noise monitoring equipment within the house at number 33, which is the immediate neighbour, for a period of 2 weeks, I think it was. With the application submission, the applicant has submitted an acoustic report as well, which the environmental protection officers reviewed.
Right, and the environmental protection report supports the unacceptable levels of noise, is that right?
It does. There were concerns about the acoustic report and the way manner in which it reached its conclusions. So part of that was due to the fact that it worked out an average of noise levels, which doesn't reflect the nature of the use, which has significant peaks and troughs. And so the maximum noise level, for example, had not been assessed as part of that. That was my understanding of the Environmental Protection Officer's comments.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions, members, to our officer on the report? No, so we move to debate. Councillor Reid.
Someone's got to start it. Chairman, this is an interesting application. I suppose it's a retrospective application because it's already in existence. However, there are some concerns. Looking purely at the parking element, I noticed that the application site is very close to a T-junction, and one may even consider it a staggered crossroads. So parking on the highway would present problems, and I can understand that coming from the parish council's concern. I think, and I've always advocated, that children must be given the opportunity to learn to swim. And I'm not going to go against that. However, in this particular case, we are in a residential area. It is very close to a neighbouring property. And obviously the noise levels could be such that it becomes a real nuisance to neighbouring residents. On that, Chair, I do agree with the officer's recommendation and would go along, sadly, in a sense, with the recommendation.
Thank you. Any further contributions? Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Yes, I would reiterate Councillor Reid's point about swimming it's a very important skill to learn, and it is difficult to find suitable places. And as we know, children make a fair old din when they're enjoying themselves, and generally at a high pitch, which carries a long way. I think, though, that running something, it's one thing to have a pool for your family to use, but running it as a business puts a different complex on it. And there are lots of instances, someone the weekend, during the week, using a workshop, drilling and hammering is one thing. But if that was a commercial business, you can see that your acceptance levels would be much lower. And so I think that really this is not an acceptable use, and I agree with the officer's report.
Thank you. Any further contributions? Okay, so this application is recommended for refusal. Can I see all those in favour of the officer recommendation, please? So that's all members. Thank you very much indeed. And we now move to item number 12 on the agenda. We'll just have a slight break whilst we change the officer presenting. Thank you. Okay, everybody, if you could just take your seats. We will move to the next item on this afternoon's agenda. Item number 12 at the Old Forge, Brook Street, Bishop's Waltham. If I could just remind you that Councillor Williams will be sitting this one out, as he's already previously, as a parish councillor, predetermined this. So the officer presenting is Rose Chapman. Good afternoon, Rose. If you could give us your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. So before you, you have two plans. At the top, we have the location plan, and you can see the red line around it showing the location, and in reference, so to the rear on the left-hand side is predominantly residential. On the right-hand side along Brook Street, point of the cursor here, this is a mixture of residential and employment areas. As explained in the report, the areas around the location, so around the building, so this building here, this building is not listed in and of itself due to a quirk of the listing system. It was not, it was leased out rather to a different person at the time of listing, so it's not part of the listed building, which is shown at the point of the cursor here. So this listed building, highlighted in blue, is listed. The wall that runs along the south of the site here is listed. But this black box here, which is the existing building, is not listed. However, at the north of the site along the point of cursor here is a curtilage listed wall because it is attached to the listed building. At the bottom, at the point of cursor, we have the proposed building site, with a larger building is proposed. And you can see at the point of the cursor here, this area to the rear would be an amenity space to serve the employment uses of the site. So here we have an aerial view. So you can see at the point of the cursor, here is the existing building. To the left-hand side, but outside of the red line plan, we have a large group of trees here. These are covered by a TPO, but are outside of the red line plan. Just to highlight once again, at the point of the cursor, at the bottom right, just outside of the red line, this is the listed building here. The area is located within the Bishop's Waltham Conservation Area. And you have residential areas to the rear here and a few to the south here. And just to highlight, just at the top of the map, off the map as shown, there is a public car park. So here we have an enlarged site plan. There is an existing amount of parking that would be impacted as part of the application, but they are still providing 7 car parking spaces, as you can see, and an additional set of cycle parking is proposed to the front corner of the building. The TPO area you can see at the top left-hand corner of the site, and you can see that the building would be outside of the root protection area for these trees. You can also see the amenity space to the rear here and additional landscaping along the boundaries of the site is also proposed. Here we have a bit of clarification in regard to the curtilage listed wall.
So on the left-hand side, this is the existing position of the wall. So the building is currently built just off the wall, but immediately attached to it. In the middle, we have a proposed demolition section. So we have the existing curtilage listed wall being retained and made good where possible. And on the right hand side, this is the proposed construction with a 600 mil, just over half a metre gap between the curtilage listed wall and the proposed building. So here you can see a little bit clearer. There is a gap between the curtilage listed wall that you can see running along here at the point of the cursor and the new building here. This is the proposed ground floor plan. As existing, there is a retail use on site. So this unit here on the ground floor is proposed to have an open plan retail space. On the other side of the building, they are proposing an open plan office space with a meeting room and amenity facilities. And then we go up to the first floor with additional office space on both sides of the building. There are proposed windows at the rear, as shown at the point of the cursor here. The two private offices would be facing each other, but would potentially allow some overlooking, and as such, there is a condition recommended to obscure glaze these rear windows up to 1.7 metres above floor level to prevent any overlooking to the rear. And just as a point of clarification, the first floor is located approximately at its nearest point 10 metres from the boundary of the rear property. It's 18 metres from the rear of the neighbour's building and 12 metres away from the neighbour to the south, which I can show clearer in this bit. So it's 10 metres the boundary here, 18 metres from here, and approximately 12 metres from here. Here we have the front and rear elevations as proposed. So the front is at the top. This would be what would be visible from the street, and at the rear is at the bottom. So these are amended plans as shown. The original did include a large pitched roof, which has been removed to reduce the mass and the height of the building. And the proposed materials would be brick and timber cladding and have been recommended to be secured at condition 7. And again, this is the proposed side elevation. On the ground floor, you can see some windows that would be opened up, but these would face the amenity space. And here, it's somewhat difficult to see, but there is a shadow showing the proposed street scene. So the top of the proposed building would match the eaves height of these two front buildings, the listed building shown here on the left. And then we're just moving on to some photos of the site. So at the top here, you can see the existing building as seen from Brook Street from the road. At the bottom, this is moving within the site, taken from the corner of the existing building, and you can see the existing residential properties that are adjacent to the site. At the top here, you can see the curtilage listed wall shown here. And at the bottom, this is a view of the existing building. And you can just see some of the TPO trees on the left-hand side here. Here we have a better view of the TPO trees at the top. And at the bottom, there is another view of the neighbouring properties that border the site. The recommendation is to approve, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move to public speaking. First is the Parish Council representative, Councillor Chris Ford. Councillor, would you like to come forward? Choose a microphone. You know how to switch it on? Excellent. And you have 3 minutes when you've started speaking.
Thank you very much. So the Parish Council would very much like the committee to know that we are fully objecting to this planning application. We've discussed it on a number of occasions at our own planning meetings, and the following things we found to be contrary to the local plan part 2. DM27, in that the proposal would not respond sympathetically to the historic setting of the Bishop's Waltham Conservation Area. DM28, in that the demolition of the existing building would not result in a redevelopment that would enhance the Bishop's Waltham Conservation Area. DM15, in that the proposal would result in a development that did not conserve or enhance the key characteristics as defined in the Bishop's Waltham design statement or the special qualities of the Bishop's Waltham Conservation Area. And DM16, in that the development would not respond positively to the character and appearance of the local environment in terms of its design, scale and layout. And finally, DM17, in that the proposed development would have an unacceptable impact on the landscape characteristics of the area. Whilst we acknowledge that the designers have changed the first floor plan somewhat, we still feel that the overall impact visually it is not in keeping with the surrounding area at all. It's far too modern. We are aware that the neighbours are concerned about overlooking, going from a single-storey building to a double-storey, which we completely understand. And when we try and look from every angle that this is going to be visible from, it will have an impact, most definitely, on the overall scene. So, yeah. It's just too modern, we think, for the entire area that it's going to be sat in. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please just hold on. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the Parish Council? No? Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. Thank you. And next we have the supporter, Toby Windsor. Good afternoon. You switch on the microphone by pressing the button at the bottom of the unit, and you have 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, esteemed members of the Planning Committee. I speak before you today wholeheartedly advocating the approval of the planning application under consideration, aligning seamlessly with the case officer's recommendation. This proposal not only adheres to the principles of the relevant planning policies, but also embodies a vision of thoughtful design aimed at enhancing Bishop Waltham's town centre. In pursuit of economic and commercial growth outlined in policy MTRA2, this project strategically integrates additional office space, reflecting a commitment to expanding and enhancing the local townscape. The transition from a dated 1.5-storey existing building to a modest 2-storey structure employs sustainable, high-quality materials, carefully chosen to respect the historic context and contribute positively to the area's evolution. With due regard to the historic environment, the proposals exhibits thoughtful consideration to the listed building, Shield House, and the Bishop's Waltham Conservation Area. It not only preserves but enhances the special interest of the listed building, gracefully integrating into the historic fabric of the area with a careful selection of robust, high-quality materials that sensitively differentiate from the surrounding palette, whilst complementing the character of its courtyard setting. The impact on the neighbouring properties and the enjoyment of their amenities has been diligently considered and mitigated through consultation with the case officer's statutory consultees. The proposal includes proactive measures such as reduction in the proposed first floor massing and height, a softening of the visual appearance, effectively minimising overlooking and increasing site permeability when viewed from the entrance. This reflects a genuine effort to coexist harmoniously with the local character and within the community. Sustainable transport considerations underscore the central location of this site, its proximity to the public amenities and accessibility through public transport. These aspects not only meet policy requirements, but also demonstrate the suitability of the use and modernisation of a potential workspace in this location, making it viable for the 21st century. In essence, this development sensitively and successfully navigates a delicate equilibrium between economic progress and heritage preservation. In doing so, it transcends mere policy compliance, showcasing a commitment to good design that uplifts Bishop's Waltham's town centre while contributing positively to the broader community. I implore the Planning Committee to recognise these benefits and vote in favour of this proposal in line with the officer's recommendation towards a balanced betterment for Bishop's Waltham. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Good timing. Well done. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the Councillor Gordon-Smith?
Yes, looking at the drawings, the building has green roofs, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. If you could just switch off the microphone as you go, that would be great. Thank you. Lovely. Rose, do you have anything to add to your presentation before we come to questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Members, questions on the report? We'll take the whole report. I have a question. Can I ask, are the tree roots going to be protected during the construction period? Have we got some sort of condition on that? Because the tree goes right over the corner. I know it's not being built over, but it's being built around, isn't it? So
yes. So a tree report was submitted as part of the application, and we have included a condition to ensure that.
Did I miss that?
Okay. To ensure that the recommendations within that report are adhered to.
Okay.
They are within the approved plans list, but if they aren't.
Okay. And my second question was about the building that's being knocked down. So you were saying it's not a non-designated heritage asset, but it's attached to a listed building. Is that right? It's attached to a listed building. Can you just explain how we decide whether, because it's the conservation area, isn't it? So quite a lot of those buildings are either going to be listed or non-designated heritage assets. So can you just confirm that it's been properly looked at from that point of view?
So yes, we had the Historic Environment Officer look at the building itself in case it was a non-designated heritage asset. The view that was taken was that the building itself had been knocked around, bits of it had fallen down and been replaced, and over time the majority of what made it a historically interesting or innovative building has been removed, so it wouldn't meet the tests of becoming a non-designated heritage asset. However, as we concluded, the wall to the north, along the north of the site, is a listed element by being, or its curtilage listed as it's attached to the listed building. So further consideration was given And we have, as part of the listed building application, we've asked for method statements and material samples to make sure that all efforts are being made to retain the listed wall as part of any construction work, and to make sure any making good is in keeping with the vernacular of the area and would not harm the listed wall.
Lovely, thank you. Other questions, members? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 180, which shows that the original structure will be demolished, and when the new structure is in place, it'll be 600 millimetres away from the boundary. Knowing that foundations in the old days were pretty rare, working so close to that wall, what would the foundations be for the new structure? And could this actually cause damage in itself to the wall?
Thank you. So at the moment, I don't have any information about the proposed foundations. It would come as part of the method statements and things as part of the listed building application. And those will be reviewed as part of a details and compliance application to make sure that any works that are undertaken would not cause damage to the listed elements of the area.
I think, I mean, it's clear from the report that the applicants are aware of the importance of not undermining and retaining that wall and doing everything they can to ensure that it is still there. I mean, there's drawings and stuff, so I think hopefully it's good to see that there, I think we can say. Any other questions, members? No? Debate. We move to debate. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. It's an interesting proposed structure to go into a conservation area. I well understand the reason why not keeping the existing structures as part of the conservation area. However, there is a concern with me that foundations are going to go very close to all the boundaries on three sides. This proposed new structure is, when you look at it, somewhere in the region of about 48–49% of the whole site. It runs from boundary to boundary, east to west. So it's going to be very, very tight on the site. I'd be interesting to hear other people's comments. As I say, the one concern I've got is the foundations and how we are going to protect those boundary walls.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. It is within a conservation area, and I listened carefully to the comments made by representative of the Bishop's Waltham Council. However, it's also on three sides surrounded by what appear to be 20th century buildings of various ages. And I think one critical point for me is that it doesn't have a facade directly onto a row of historical buildings. If this building were fronting onto Book Street, I might feel differently. But I think the impression that I would have if I walked down Brook Street when this had been built, if it is, would be one of surprise and personally some pleasure, I think, in seeing an interesting building nestled in a discrete little enclave. So I disagree with the suggestions that this is somehow damaging to the conservation area. I think it would actually enhance it, and I shall be supporting the proposal.
Thank you. Oh, a forest of hands. Councillor Gordon-Smith first.
Yes, I think it's a well thought out and imaginative design. As Councillor Edwards said, it's set back So you don't, it's not in your face. You walk past it and you glimpse through and you see this interesting building. There could be technical problems with the footings, but there are ways round that, putting in pile foundations and so on. It makes use of a rather underused, rather dire space and what's basically an old brick shed to create something really interesting, and with a green roof and various other planting brought in there, you've probably enhanced the biodiversity considerably, and it's useful, you know, imaginative use of materials that are appropriate to the site in terms of colour and so on. I think it's wonderful. I'd rather have that than fake chimneys.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, it's a case of telepathy here. I think I'm entirely accord with Councillor Edwards and Councillor Gordon-Smith's comments. Dead space, dead building, bring it alive. Its evolution, I think it's going to enhance the wherewithal of Bishop's Waltham in terms of facility. So I have no objection.
Any more? No? Lovely. Okay, well, we'll go to the decision now. So the application is before us, and the recommendation is that we permit this application. So can I see all those in favour of permitting this application? That's all 8 members. Thank you very much indeed. And that's the end of today's planning committee. Thank you very much. See you all in December.